I think we've got a unique record. I mean, you go right back to Paddy Ashdown's day. He was having a go at Tony Blair about why the then Labour government wasn't being tough enough on News International on allegations of predatory pricing. Look at Tom McNally's work to actually insist on new plurality rules, again against the objections of the then Labour government. Look at Chris Hume and Simon Hughes and others being much more outspoken than anyone else in British politics just before the general election about the allegations of phone hacking. We were the first party before the election to call for a proper judicial inquiry. So I think, it's always dangerous to be too sort of holier than thou. We shouldn't be pious about this, but I do think we should be proud of the fact that we're the only party that didn't kowtow to the Murdoch press, A, and B, that we caught the kind of whiff of something that was really wrong very, very early. Politicians will always have contacts with proprietors and editors and journalists. That's completely right. One is that we shouldn't sort of pretend is going to change, and it shouldn't, because they do need to communicate with each other. But it needs to be done openly, and what you don't want to have is this really unhealthy relationship where one sort of ends up in the pockets of the other, where you have Murdoch sort of slinking in by the back door to be thanked for the sort of services he's provided via the media for a particular political party. One thing that we've always believed in, and I passionately believe this as a sort of cornerstone of liberalism, is vested interests of any kind, whether it's in the trade union movement, whether it's in business, whether it's in politics, are bad if they're just allowed to do what they like unchallenged. And I think that's what's changing now, which is exciting.
And is it just a Murdoch thing? And I'm sure you know the Information Commissioner in 2006, Operation Motorman, where they found, I think, 31 different newspapers where they could show that they had paid for illegally. I mean, I think News of the World was fifth on that list.
Yeah.
There were a number of other...
No, you're right.
Should we be looking wider?
Oh, of course we should be looking wider, and that's one of the reasons why I was very keen and played a major role in making sure that the inquiry should be as broad as possible. That it shouldn't be just a sort of snapshot looking only at one organisation or one offence, but looking much more broadly at practices across the media, looking at obviously the interaction between the police and the media, and crucially, this is something I sort of pushed very hard in the latter stage, internal debate about this inquiry, successfully as it turned out, that it should also include the relationship between the media and politics. And look, I mean, we will see now what comes out of the inquiry. I think we've got some really, really good independent-minded, independent-spirited people acting on the panel in support of the judge, and I have a strong feeling they're not going to rest until they've had a good look at what other media organisations are doing.
Good, but that sort of brings us on to the inquiry, what's been happening most recently. And you presumably a bit constrained by government as to what you can say publicly about what you've been doing. How much have you had to push David Cameron on this? How much work have you been doing?
Look, I've been pushing. I mean, I've been pretty public about it. I came straight out at the beginning saying it needs to be a judge-led inquiry before other people did in government. I said that Murdoch needs to reconsider his bid before anyone else in government did. And I pushed very hard for it to be as open as possible, totally independent, and was very keen that the panel members should be people who are not going to be in any way kind of intimidated or overwhelmed about their task. So you push, and I mean the interesting thing, isn't it? We are basically an anti-establishment party. Why else would you want to change the electoral system, change the House of Lords, change the relationship between the media and the press, change party funding for parties? These are all things that anti-establishment parties like us do. It's what we're in politics for. And now we find ourselves in government, and it's. I mean, I think it's pretty useful to have an anti-establishment force inside government, because it gives you a ringside seat to actually change things in the way that you want. And I think the inquiry wouldn't have turned out, frankly, in the way that it has, in terms of its remit, scope and power, if we were not there at the heart of government pushing in that direction.
What do you think about Parliament's role? Has it played a significant role?
Oh, yeah.
Has it really lived up to what it could do? Could it do better?
No, I think it's a really important moment for Parliament. I think your role on the Home Affairs Committee, Adrian Sanders' role on in fact, Adrian, I thought was, he was the one who she cited this doctrine of willful blindness, which is very, very important, a legal and political concept. Yesterday, I think that shows Parliament, doing its job. In a sense, the kind of enormous outcry about, isn't this extraordinary that these powerful people have been brought before a select committee, shouldn't be extraordinary, it shouldn't be exceptional, it shouldn't be unique, it should be standard practice that if you have a very big influence on any aspect of British public life, you should be available to answer questions from Parliament. It should be completely normal, and I hope increasingly it will be.
One last question, if I can. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the Home Affairs Select Committee, published at 5 a.m. this morning.
No.
So you've clearly seen some of what's been happening
Yes.
with the police and the Met Police and some of the failings of their work. Do you have any comments about their relationship with media and their work as an organisation?
Well, I think the Met is in a state of crisis. Of course it is. This sense that it had got far too close to one particular media organisation, and that, again, there was a kind of really unhealthy kind of intertwining of vested interests in the police and the media. That all needs to be disentangled, and it's only just starting now. I think you guys in the committee are doing a really great job in sort of peeling the layers off this particular issue. And I think we'll need to ask some big questions about basic governance in the Met, basic governance in police forces as a whole, and again, what kind of independent scrutiny can you have to make sure that we don't have this kind of slightly murky relationship repeat itself in the future.
Thank you very much for taking the time to do this.